Hey guys, so just thought I would do a quick video today talking a little bit about how I think of Bitcoin's scarcity. So some of this is a little bit of just fooling around with numbers, but also just understanding the concepts involved, just to explain in a little bit more detail why Bitcoin is just so incredibly scarce. So let's just flip into screen share, and I'll just show you a couple of links now. One of the interesting ones that I thought was worth thinking about is think about how many millionaires there are in the world, right? So, I mean, we just want rough numbers. I know it's just Wikipedia; it's not exactly going to be super accurate, but it it looks like approximately there's 33 million millionaires in the world, right? And so I think that's a really funny thing because when you think about it from that point of view, there will never be more than 21 million bitcoins. So if every millionaire in the world wanted one, they couldn't even get it. It wouldn't even be possible. So that's worth thinking about when you're trying to understand just how scarce Bitcoin really is. And we'll do some calculations later, and I'll show you a couple other things while we're at it. Yeah, so here's just one of the articles I was looking at as well. So yeah, so saying roughly 33 million in this global wealth report. And I think to really appreciate the scarcity here is you've got to understand the situation we're in with physical resources. And until you understand the ultimate resource or the concept behind that, it's hard for you to truly grasp just how scarce Bitcoin is. So I'll just kind of talk through some of the key points of this book. And the basic idea is that with any particular resource in humans' history, as that resource became more scarce, the price went up. And then what did that do? Well, people would then try to go and either discover more of that resource, or they would try to use it in a more economic way, like they would economize on their usage of it, or they would recycle it, or they would find a substitute. And so thus, what Julian Simon was referring to in the ultimate resource is actually human capacity for innovation. And so when you consider that applied to physical objects, it means there's almost anything in the world that people want to store their value in. Apply enough human creativity and ingenuity to it, someone can go out there and make more of that, right? And you think of the traditional things that most people they store their wealth in. Examples of that might be buildings and houses and apartments. And yet, well, if you understand the ultimate resource, well, they can make more of those. Now, yes, it's true, certain certain types of houses and property will be more valuable because of their location in relative to other property. So obviously, a beachside property might be worth more than one further away from the beach or one really close into the city. But you understand the general point there that there's something to this concept of scarcity that we are now seeing with Bitcoin that you cannot recreate in the physical world. So in some ways, it's even more scarce than gold. It's one of the few other things that's almost that is more scarce is our time, right? Your human time and effort. So I think that's a good way to understand this. So if you're interested, I would recommend you check out this book here. It's for free. You can download. You can just read it online here. I'll leave the link in the description for anyone interested. And now let's just sort of fool around with numbers and just come up with a rough estimate of like if we were to think about what the maximum possible value for Bitcoin could be decades into the future. So what I'm going to do here is just take this number here, 280 trillion. Let's say that's the number. And what I've done is I've taken, one other thing to explain here. There was a chain analysis done suggesting that actually there's a lot of Bitcoins that have been lost and are now out of circulation. And so if you total all of these up, let's call it 4 million, yeah? So about 1 million of those were Satoshi's coins. A bunch of these coins have been lost. You hear all those stories of the guy who lost his Bitcoin in a hard drive and a junk tip and so on and so forth, right? So let's say it was, 21 minus 17, minus 4 rather, gives you a total of 17 million Bitcoins that will ever exist, right? And that we're talking about actually that's the value for 2140, yeah? But I mean, anyway, just for the sake of showing you just some rough numbers, if we went 280 trillion, which is the global wealth figure, and at a maximum, That's what you could look at. Now, let's say even if you applied a scaling factor, say 80%. So let's say there were other monies out there, you know, we're still, and obviously you fraction that down and down based on, how likely you think the adoption of it is and how much time. Obviously, this is something that will take decades to play out. So, just at a very high level, this is sort of what the like maximum bull case could be for Bitcoin, right? And then just to sort of flip that, let's say you got 17 million Bitcoins, and obviously there's 7.6 billion people in the world, roughly, and that is the figure per person, right? That is the amount of Bitcoin that, if you were to divide it evenly, right? So that hopefully that really helps explain to you just how scarce this thing is. Yeah. One other interesting thing that I found, I'll close some of these tabs. So one other thing that I found quite interesting and it's worth sort of looking at is there's one way of analyzing the price of Bitcoin by looking at the 200-day moving average, right? So over the short run, you can see obviously right now it looks like, oh my God, Bitcoin is crashing. What do you do? But if you really kind of zoom out on the chart, you can see here, well, it wasn't that long ago that the price was sub $1,000, right? And so even if you zoomed into this part on the graph, it might look similar to what it looks like now. So I think it's really just kind of a bit of a 7 steps forward, 2 steps back dance with Bitcoin. So one of the ways that you can assess Bitcoin is by sort of smoothing out that price average over time, and that's what this 200-day moving average concept does. So there's a really cool Twitter account I like to follow, which calculates that as at right now. And so as at right now, at a price of around 12,000 US, this 200-day moving average is 7,000. And then what you can do is think about what percentage or what multiple that is of that, right? And so based on the historical analysis, obviously these relationships may not always hold, but at least in the past, by looking at kind of how far it was so obviously this number is not accurate now, but I mean, if you were to look at kind of where it would fit, well, 1.7 is actually in this kind of range. So it's almost like it's a good buy from that viewpoint. So from this kind of back testing threshold, you can see here from the analysis that the Investors podcast have done, Preston has found that essentially under 2.4x was good value for Bitcoin. So that's just something to sort of give you just a rough flavor of kind of where we're at this point. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but personally, I'm pretty bullish on the price over the next few weeks. Maybe we'll get like another week of kind of hanging around in this area, and then we'll start the next bull run up. But if not, oh well, that's no big deal. As I mentioned before, you have to truly understand Bitcoin's scarcity, you really have to consider the ultimate resource and the point in that book, which is that we can easily go out and discover more of a resource so long as the price moves up. And then that will create a supply response, right? But the point here I'm trying to make here with Bitcoin is there is no supply response. Because even if more people tried to go and mine Bitcoin, the difficulty would readjust such that it would remain on that initial or close enough to that curve distribution, and there would never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. So hopefully that helps explain to you guys what I'm talking about, just how scarce Bitcoin is. Thanks, guys.